Welcome this morning to the Tyler Dickerhoof Show. Today is the Newswire. We are live.
Let's get it.
Alex, welcome. Today we're talking about tariffs.
Tariffs, baby.
We started chatting about it and kind of getting our notes in line. I'm like, no, let's just hit record. And, one of the things that you were talking about, since we talked about it last night through early this morning, and now at the time of this recording at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, there's already been a deal brokered. Wow.
Wow.
Did anyone see that coming?
You always talk about it. Trump he said it before too. He wanted to use these tariffs as a negotiation tactic.
Yeah. Here's the deal. Let's say, for example, hey, you can call it poker, you can call it whatever. Right. Dude, you better come out swinging. And I think the part that is like, all right, the two things that I want to really share with people, because so many people that don't have this perspective struggle mightily with Trump. He's not a leader. He's not a leader. He's not a leader. They say, I can't believe he's a leader. Yeah, you're right. He's not a leader. Now, he's in a leadership position, and there's elements of what I think he's done in the last 6 months since the assassination attempt to be more of a leader. But he's not a leader first. He's a negotiator. And so if you look at it with that concept, you're like, dude's been negotiating since he was elected. Oh, yeah, Ukraine,
since he was elected.
Russia, we're going to end this. And now all of a sudden,
Middle East.
If you look back, like the whole TikTok deal, oh, it's going away, it's going away. And the outgoing party could not fathom a negotiation. They're like, well, this is what's going to happen. And Trump's like, no. I'll negotiate with you. I'll give you a little win. We'll make all this work. And then, he signs the order for the tariffs. And what most people don't realize, they think the tariffs are about lowering the cost in the U.S. No, that has nothing to do with the cost of goods, any of that. It has to do with two factors: fentanyl and immigration. Fentanyl and immigration. Where does all the fentanyl that comes into the U.S. come from? Canada and Mexico.
Yeah, the borders.
All the fentanyl that's produced, where does it get all the precursors? A little Breaking Bad. Let's go back to understanding precursors.
Great show, by the way.
Yeah. Where do you get all the precursors? China. So all of a sudden you're like, all right, what's the biggest leverage point I can have? I either get to your emotions or I get to your money. And sometimes it's both. I'll just hit you right in the bank. Let's go. Yeah. And all he was really asking is come sit down at the table and let's figure out a better way to handle this thing, as opposed to the U.S. trying to do it all. And that's my quick little rant. But then you see this morning, he sat down with the Mexican president. And as of hopping on here, they have a 30-day stay on the tariffs because Mexico has said, hey, we're going to actually get to the border with troops and we're going to try to control this thing.
10,000 troops to the border to stem the flow of illegal migration and fentanyl. That was what was updated. Yeah, just about an hour or so.
Kind of crazy.
And ongoing, obviously negotiations with Trudeau and Canada right now, and I'm sure there's something's going to break this week with that negotiation.
Oh, for sure, because it goes into effect tomorrow, February 4th. So right now it's not even in effect, but Kelly and I, our significant portion of our business is in Canada.
Yeah,
and we have several partners in Canada, and talking to them, and what's funny, they live in the province of Quebec, and they're like, can we be Americans already? Like, what's so funny is learning about that. And you go back to the history of Quebec trying to leave Canada, secede from Canada. And, Canada, U.S., there's this kind of, we like each other, but it's like, don't make us like America. Most Canadians and Quebec people, as I've been around, of like, I would vote to become the 51st state right now. Like, I bet if they were to hold a vote right now today, Quebec overwhelmingly by a
Yeah.
2/3 vote or more would agree to be the 51st state. Guarantee it.
That's interesting. I don't know the political ideologies of the provinces of Canada as well as you do, but
I've learned it. I've had to learn it, and
You
it's
did.
really interesting to learn and understand. But here's going back on it. They're like, this is going to massively affect us, and they're right.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that, in terms of these tariff wars that are as they're calling it.
Yeah, that's
I
what
know
they
it's
are.
manufacturing. It's going to affect manufacturing, energy, farming. Like, can you break it down for us how these tariffs will? I'm watching on CNBC. A manufacturing expert comes on and
Yeah.
causing all this fear.
Yeah.
Basically, millions of jobs are going to be
Well,
lost.
I'm gonna use a story that I learned last week. I had the opportunity to speak for an organization that it has presence in 11 different countries.
Okay.
And as I was at dinner one night, I was sitting next to kind of the United Nations of people. I had a guy from Mexico, Germany, originally from the Netherlands, a Canadian, another person from the Netherlands, and we're talking about different trade, different business, get a little bit into politics. And one of the things that we went back and we revisited about the Colombian issue from a week or so ago. And the one gentleman there, his role was is the CEO of one of the business units of the entire global part of one of the business units. And he talked about that. And, of course, here comes out the tariffs are going to happen to Colombia. You accept these illegals or I'm going to put big tariffs on you.
Right.
And when this news came out, this gentleman who's the global CEO gets a call from his country manager in Colombia. It's like, dude, what do we do? Like, we have a significant amount of product that, is sold, that's exported from the U.S. into Colombia. What do we do? And, so they're like, well, we can, in the short term, we can get product from Canada, get to you. We'll make it work. Right. Mm-hmm. Within a couple hours, the whole deal is off. Colombia's like, I'll send my plane for him. Please don't put this on us. Right. And I share that story because it's twofold. A lot of multinational companies do have a little bit of option, but it's not something they regularly do because what they regularly do is either the easiest or that's the way they've done business. Mm-hmm. So two things will happen out of this because it happens every time. Either they create contingency plans, which is going to make them more agile as a company, or two, quite honestly, they're going to create those contingency plans and be like, why haven't we been doing this before? Because this is actually better for us. So that's a risk. But I think the piece that we talk about this trade is, it's not only U.S. exporting, it's, Canada or Mexico importing. It's also all of the precursors, to go back to that word, the parts that get applied to manufacturing. So when you come back to manufacturing, there's some parts that are made in Korea, that are made in Mexico, that are made in Canada. They're all brought here to the U.S., made a finished product. And so now all of a sudden you have a trade issue, whether it's tariffs, maybe some of that gets slowed down, it increases cost. I think the initial is this fear of, oh my goodness, this is going to end the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's I was shocked by what was occurring. And I believe the U.S. economy is at least 10 times larger than Mexico and 10 times larger than Canada.
Oh, if not more.
If not more. And so, obviously you saw our stock market, falling. I think it's recovered by now. But like the impact it would have on those countries seems much larger given how much smaller their economies are. But then you see Trudeau, who's taking this hardline stance of all right, you're gonna
Trudeau is pissed off.
Tariff you,
Yeah, Trudeau is pissed off. He's pissed off because Trump made a mockery of Trudeau.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: there's a reason why Trudeau resigned, because no one in his country likes him. He had a lower approval rating by multiple factors compared to Biden. So Trudeau is trying to what he's trying to do is I believe, is trying to gain a little bit of favor. Quickly, if he tries to be too big of a, oh, look at me, his entire country is going to squash him and say, the other countries have decided to play ball and you're trying to be a martyr. Like, he will get, he may get exiled from the country because of this. Like, he's hated that bad.
Yeah, no, that's the funny thing about it is that I know he's on his way out, and I don't know
the specifics of how and why that works, but
that works, because it's different, much different than here in the U.S. So I was just knowing that he's on his way out, and now going through this, like you kind of explained this martyr of like I'm going to negotiate, or not even. We know he's negotiating because that was breaking news this morning that him and Trump are talking, but. Which is even funnier that you say that because his news is, look at me, I'm big bad Justin Trudeau. I'll stand up to Trump. Oh, Trump, please give me something. Like, please don't kill me. Right. Yeah, and that's what's going on. It's laughable. Yeah, I'd love to know, and I'm sure in those negotiations, it's tough. Like, these are going to be tough negotiations.
Oh, yeah.
That they're going to have.
You're not going to get one over on Trump.
No, that's what
you're
he's
not.
An expert at. He's an expert at making deals.
And I read something over the weekend, and there's two things that I've learned in this current presidency. Mm-hmm. Don't believe anything you read at all for face value. Don't believe anything, because all of the major news outlets and a certain segment of people are just trying to gather as many clicks as they possibly can.
Oh, yeah.
So you really need to dig and say, unless I have verified video that Trump said it, or an absolute, like, very, very legitimate release from his office, it's probably not true. And if anything, it's very twisted.
And to your point on twisted, if you do read the headlines with all the major, the CNNs, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, NBC, it is like this is going to be bad. This tariff war, is going to be bad for the country. Look what happened in the market. And then by the end of the month, right, let's say 3-4 weeks from now, everything's negotiated, and this is all the fear that they want. Like you said, this clickbait that they're building into people's minds. What's going to happen? The markets are crashing. This is happening. We're going to lose our jobs. And then next thing you know, we're at all-time highs. Everything's good.
Well, I mean, it's not going to be perfect. But here's the thing that you have to, I guess, consider. And if we were already doing our best, we wouldn't be where we were. Stop and think about that. If everything was perfect, we wouldn't need to be fixing it. Everything's not perfect. So you may feel warm and cozy. You've gotten used to what it is, but it's broken. And sometimes in order to break it, you got to tear out all the drywall and the windows and fix it. You may we can just keep patching it. We can keep patching it. We can keep patching it. It's not going to work. You got to fix it and build back up. And so there are going to be things, and Trump has admitted it. Yeah, some of this is not going to go well.
Yeah, he did say
it is what it is. And we're just going to have to pivot from that and understand it. But ultimately, we're trying to build something that's more sustainable, stronger, and better for the American people.
Tyler, in your opinion, your opinion, what is broken? Like, what are the things that are broken?
Well, I think these tariffs are first and foremost about drug trade and immigration. That's broken.
Yeah.
And, to the words of what we've seen here, the U.S. has been the only one on this sector that's fighting it. Our friends to the north and the south, they're not fighting it. They're like, dude, that's your problem. Like, everyone wants to use our country as a transit. They don't want it to go on here because they understand the big pie in the sky. Like the behemoth customer is over there. It's kind of like so often you see this in business. You're like, oh, I want to go after the biggest customer, that you'll walk by 100 deals to get the big customer.
The whale.
The whale, yes. Yeah. And it's like, that's how I believe Canada and Mexico, just for sheer numbers of people, the ability to trade, the distance, all of those things, you have much larger city centers, easier to trade in the U.S.
Yeah.
So there's that piece of it. And it's asking them, say, hey, no. I need some help here.
Mhm.
We need some help. If you value the United States as a endpoint for your products and or as a trade partner,
Mhm.
I need you to help me. And quite honestly, I think they've, either through the last presidency or whatever, it's been very nice. Say, hey, can you help us?
Yeah.
Can you help us? Can you help us? And maybe they haven't even said it that meekly. It's just kind of like expecting them to help. And, Canada, Mexico is like, this is not our problem.
Right.
Not our problem. And Trump's like, yeah, it is. And
Yeah,
I'll
now
show you how it's your problem.
the other thing that I was thinking about that I've heard a lot of debate on is the strength or the weakness of the US dollar, and whether a weak dollar is good or a strong dollar is good. Do you have a take on that?
Well, I mean, here's the interesting thing is um, when we look at the value of the US dollar and just look at it from what can you buy for a US dollar?
Right.
I would say it is probably at the all-time low in the United States. Meaning, let's just gauge it by eggs, and there's so much more to do with eggs, or we can put it at a gallon of gasoline. Not the absolute worst for a gallon of gasoline, but man, on a historical note, we're at the top 3% ever of gas prices. So that tells me that the value of the dollar is not very good. But if you look at the conversion rate to the Canadian dollar, man, we're on one of the higher in the last 20 years and higher historical marks. If you look at the value of the US dollar compared to the euro or some other currencies, man, the value of the dollar is pretty high.
Yeah. And we'll do these negotiations and this, revitalization of like the American economy. Is that to strengthen the US dollar?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's no indication to me right now that any of the tariffs, any of these situations have anything to do with improving the U.S. economy.
Okay,
Like,
more
let's be
so
honest.
the drugs and migration.
It could absolutely hamper the U.S. economy. Let give you an example. And I read this article over the weekend. I shared with you some ag trade stuff, but there was one thing in particular that China is one of the largest consumers of agricultural products produced in the U.S., most notably corn and soybeans. And it's very normal that, I had a history. I worked in the commodity markets for 4 years, and China was always in some way, shape, or form trying to manipulate the U.S. markets. Because they're such a large consumer, they say, we are buying, we're not buying. They would, say, oh, we're buying the U.S., turn around and buy from South America. They would always be playing games to manipulate the prices because they were such a large consumer. Well, over the weekend, last week, with this impending tariff, there was a portion of their consumption that they ended up switching from a U.S. purchase to a Russian purchase. Okay. And so there was like, oh my goodness, this is just going to absolutely hamper U.S. farmers. Yeah, it could hurt, right? 10%, a portion of whatever they bought. Yeah, that's going to suck. Is it the first time? Quite honestly, it's not. And, the part of the article was, oh my goodness, now they gave all this money to Russia. It's going to make Russia stronger. I mean, in part, yes, but it's also like not absolute. You just have to understand the big piece. Is that a risk of this? Absolutely. But there's also the risk of, and U.S. farmers is kind of like, this is a risk you play every day. This is not a new risk. And that's why there's so many tools as far as the commodity markets. There's options. There are, puts and calls that you can help protect against. This is not a new phenomenon. This is not like, man, we've had such a healthy relationship. It goes there like clockwork. No, China pulls the rug out from underneath the U.S. agricultural economy on the regular, not new. Funny. And so it's going to be painful in some extents. But if you're looking at that from you go to say a U.S. farmer and say, all right, here's the deal, buddy. And let's just be honest. You can miss out on, some soybean sales. And yeah, that's going to probably put your operation in financial strain. But you know all the stories you're reading about, kids that are ODing on fentanyl, and they're getting closer and closer, and now potentially your kids. That's the big picture here. So I understand the cost of your operation, operating your business, just got a lot tougher. But at the same point, the game we're playing here is we want to see people come to this country for all the right reasons, and we want to see less fentanyl, less like life-altering, detrimental like stuff coming to the U.S. Yeah. Can you buy into that? And I think that's one of the things that I had to go search and understand. I just hadn't seen yet the main basis of these tariffs. Very prominent, provision by the White House said this is what it's all about. Very clear, concise. How many people right now that you are reading articles are talking about, hey, these are the reasons why we have the tariffs. This is what's going on. We want Canada, Mexico, and China to come to play and actually be a partner in the immigration and drug, trade. We want them to be a partner and help us. No, they don't, because then all of a sudden it would be like, all right, if we got to put a penalty on them to fix that stuff, let's go.
Yeah, it's all primarily focused on about the economy and how it's going to, tank the economy. People are going to lose jobs. It's all about basically the financial loss that it will have or could have potentially.
Which is really funny because you wonder who's driving that narrative.
Well, not all the major, but a lot of the major news outlets.
Who has the most to gain? Who has the most to gain by throwing shade right now?
The media, the liberal left media.
The people that are no longer in control, the people that are no longer sitting there helping to drive this decision. It's very interesting living in Washington, and I think it's no different in California or Massachusetts or some of the other predominantly or solely Democratic Party held.
Yeah.
Is there some major, like here in Washington, it's almost laughable. Like they just had to do some major budget cuts here in Washington. And they're like, well, we just don't have enough money. It's like you had the highest tax revenue ever in 2024. State of Washington had the highest tax revenue on record ever in 2024. And they're saying, we got to cut the budget. And so they're saying, well, exactly. And so now, and it is Democratic held across all three branches of the government.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are saying it's like, not my problem. Kind of like, not my problem.
But what do you guys say, like in your communities? Like, do you go, what the hell?
Well, that's what's coming out and saying, like, you're blaming the we need to drive up more tax revenues. Like you had the most money you've ever, received last year, generated. Yes. And you're operating continually at a deficit. You are wasting money in so many ways. Why are you blaming the citizens and saying we have to find new ways to generate money when, just like California, you've wasted like exorbitant amounts? I mean, we're in a state with it's either 12 or $16 billion deficit.
Yeah, it's because why they have these what was the woman that was making $750,000 a year as the Los Angeles
water department. Yeah. So like, I think when you start taking all that into consideration is what is what's the general ideology of people that are causing the most upheaval right now? It's people that are having a hard time of accepting reality.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the book Good to Great?
No.
By Jim Collins.
Okay.
It's by Jim Collins, and it was studies done between late 70s, early 90s. It was actually completed in the early 2000s, and it looked at companies and their success rate based upon comparing their success to the rest of the market. And he identified 11 companies that excelled the rest of the market. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the stories that he tells in that book is called the Stockdale Paradox. And it's about the prisoner of war, Jim Stockdale, who was imprisoned during the Vietnam War. And he was a survivor. I think 8 years he was held in captive. And one of the things that Jim Stockdale talks about, you can search it, you can find the YouTube of him presenting this. And he goes, we need to accept the brutal facts. And, he talks about, they said, hey, who survived, right? You survived and no one thought you would survive. And he goes, yeah, I accepted reality that I could die tomorrow, but I still had hope and I was willing to fight. And he goes, the pessimist, dude, they died, before we got to Christmas. Said the optimists were actually the ones that died first because they thought, oh, we're getting out. They just had no will, no perseverance. The pessimists died next, and it was the realists, the ones who were like, this is a hot mess and this sucks, but we just have to keep grinding through it. Those are the ones that survived.
Yeah.
And I share that because that's kind of what's going on. We can be optimistic and like, oh, okay. No, this is going to kind of suck. And we can be pessimistic like, oh, we're going to ruin everything. No, it's not going to be like that either.
Being real.
The reality is it's going to be tough to grind through this. But here's the thing I look at. Think back 2021.
Yeah. Okay.
What were the great, tough decisions that were made in that time that said, all right, this is going to suck, but it's going to make us better. Wearing masks and, isolating and all those things was not a brutal reality that made people better. No. It's kind of like you have all the Senate hearings for the, what's the name of it right now?
What, RFK?
No, for the cabinet,
all
where
the cabinet members?
Yes. And Kash Patel. And one of the guys, so fun. If you haven't seen the clip, go find the clip because it's hilarious. And the guy's like, asking Kash, he's like, hey, you're kind of a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, yeah, that's what they've said. He goes, well, looking at your record, you were right on like pretty much all of them. He's like, yeah. And the guy goes, I think we need some different conspiracy theorists. So funny. And it's, this reality, it's kind of like, stop. The reality is it's not exactly like we're being told.
Yeah.
But it's probably not as bad either.
Well, yeah, to me, it's like critical thinking, right? And if, you have, like, if we go back to that COVID situation and this situation, it's like really analyzing the data and everything that's going on around you and not necessarily diving into the fear or diving into the optimism, but you're just like really thinking about, okay, what is happening here? There's this, illness that's traveled from possibly China, made in a lab. Like, what is it really killing people? And like, look at the science and the data. Oh, it's really not. There's ways. And because the rhetoric from media can be very extremely fearful and get people into these frenzies of whether it's extreme optimism or extreme fear, right? And instead of just like which is the mindset of like, this is the reality, let's analyze it. What the hell's going on?
Yeah. I mean, hey, this is my opinion and thought. It's going to be a bumpy road, but man, this is part of the journey. And it is what it is. And could it suck for all of it? Yeah, there's going to be some things that, financially probably are, going to be bumpy the next 12 to 18 months. It is what it is. But I think the only way for it to get better is to go through that. It's not going to get better if we don't do anything.
No, to your point, if we want to change all of the issues that have been created over the last 4 years and, make this country a safer, stronger, better place, it's usually not like blue skies and rainbows.
Yeah. I mean, I would even extend beyond that. It goes beyond the last 4. It really goes beyond that. It goes beyond it in, say, for a generation. And, Trump's got to, take some of the onus. Obama, Bush, all of them are like, we're a part of this problem too. And I think, especially when you look at some of the You know what's been very interesting to me is, you know, Biden camp really didn't want to have anything to do with Trump. Trump was like, hey, I'll come to my office, I'll do my thing, whatever.
Yeah.
And you see the interactions between Obama and Trump. I think there's a much greater appreciation between those two right now.
It looks like it, at least, from what we've seen.
Yeah, because you think about it, like you look at the cold iciness between Harris, Biden, more Jill than Joe. Joe's just trying to find out if it's ready, if it's ice cream time or not. Let's be honest, poor guy. But when you look at the conversations that you have seen, whether through the Carter Memorial, few other situations, the interactions between Obama, that's not terse. And it wasn't just 1-2 words.
Yeah.
Like they were having conversations.
And no, they are, and they're probably the most obviously acutely aware of what the hell's going on. I mean, Bush is getting old. Biden is where Biden is.
Bush has been out of the game, and Bush is happy to just paint. Good for him.
And so they are.
Go be a grandpa and paint.
And if you really look at that, you look at it going, these are two human beings, right? People that are in positions of power, or were in positions of power, and have a lot of pull and information, right? Information is really key.
And relationships.
And relationships that are, I think, have a common goal. And the problem is like the society we live in, and the way the media and everyone consumes, they make, whether it's Obama or Trump, like these people are like the worst people ever created by God.
They're not the best. They're not the worst.
And it's like, they're just humans. Like there are far worse people than these two on this planet.
I mean, as one of my mentors has said, I'm not as good as you think, and I'm not as bad as you make me out to be either.
Yeah. I think it's true for both gentlemen. I think they're just people probably trying to figure this shit out. Yeah. They have different personality types, but at the end of the day, it's like, how do we get this country out of the mess it's been in for the last 40, 50 years?
So I think it's going to be interesting as we watch this play out in the coming weeks, time frame. There's going to be more. But hey, I know this. Through great adversity comes change and opportunity, and we'll continue to kind of dig into that. But the biggest thing to remember for those you watching and engaging today, one, I'd love to know your thoughts. Make sure you comment on LinkedIn or YouTube. Share. Let's continue this conversation. But Trump is a negotiator first. I made this tease in the beginning. I'm going to finish this thought. He's a negotiator first. He tried to do that the first go around. He's done that. That's where you see him building relationships with the leadership in China and North Korea and Russia. It's kind of like, if I don't get them to the table, there's no way we're going to work this. Making them adversaries does not help anyone. Doesn't mean I like them. But at the same point, I'm going to find a way to sit down at their table. As they say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I see him doing that. Number two is, I really think if you listen to the words that Trump has said, and you may not agree with all of them, and he's a sarcastic New Yorker, he really is he has done way more to cast a vision since his first assassination attempt than I think he did in the entire previous presidency or anything from that. He really cares about a legacy of, as you hear in those words, and not my perception, just hear the words that he uses. Like, there's make America great again, but there's also like, we need to stop the things that are tearing us down. And that's what he talks about. So, in that, I think he's actually, becoming a little bit more of a leader. And then there's this last caveat is a leader doesn't make everyone happy. It's not going to happen.
For sure.
It's been told to me, one thing about leadership is you upset people at a rate they can withstand it. And it doesn't mean you're going around upsetting people. It's just knowing that they're not always going to like your decisions or the way you go about things. But can we reach our vision? Can we accomplish that mission? That's what will be told. So any final words, Alex?
No, this is a whole nother conversation, but when you mentioned China and Russia and farming, it just got me thinking about, the whole the war obviously going on in Ukraine, and the strategic positioning of Ukraine. Ukraine's the breadbasket of Europe, right? It has most of the farms and controls most of the farming that happens in Europe. So it makes sense why Russia would want Ukraine, and that's been a long historical point of contention. So
yeah, it's a battle. It's interesting, and war will play out there. So thanks for being here. Reminder, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get notified whenever we release new content. And if you're on LinkedIn, thanks for being here. Look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good one.